Welcome to the Shack News Chattycast, the podcast that's banned in Germany for being too violent. I'm Steve Watts.
And I'm Brian Carr. Steve, guess what?
What?
Today's Chattycast is brought to you by Audible.com. You can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/Chattycast. And if you need help spelling that, it's ChattyCast. Thank you so much, Audible, for sponsoring the Chattycast.
That is awesome.
Or Les Chattycast, as it's known in France.
Every week we pick a big topic and post about it on the Shack News Chatty, and then we talk about it in detail with your comments fueling the discussion, hence Chattycast. This week, we are joined by our guest, Shack News video personality and noted amiibo skeptic, Greg Burke.
Hello!
Greg, would you like to say a little something about yourself to open up?
I didn't get up at 5 a.m. to get Dark Pit, and I'm ashamed of myself.
That's the first step towards recovery.
Yeah, Brian is like a recovering amiibo addict. So this is an intervention, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's going to be a crappy intervention because, Steve, were you not telling me just earlier this morning
I was,
that Bowser, I know you're out of amiibo, but Bowser Jr. looks really cool,
Bowser
which is kind of like saying,
cool.
I know you stopped drinking.
I'm not incorrect.
But, this whiskey's really good.
But that one looks pretty good. Maybe I wake up at 5 a.m. one day. See, here's the thing. When you're a parent, you're waking up at 5 a.m. anyway. It makes it so much easier to cope with those things.
And it kind of makes sense, too, because you can go there with the baby.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to push you over.
No one's going to punch you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to open up the show...
You had a baby just to get amiibo, didn't you?
Excuse me, front of the line, baby. Baby, excuse me, I have a baby, front of the line.
Yeah, you're on to me. We've also been doing 55 episodes of Chattycast, all to stage a very elaborate intervention for Greg. All those others were just like setting the stage. Anyway, to open up the show, we're going to talk about what we have been playing. I know Brian and I have been playing one of the same games. So Brian, how about you start us off here?
Well, we have. I was playing a little bit of Rare Replay. I went and picked that up yesterday. I won't talk about it much because I know you're going to probably talk about it some. You wrote a great review of it. But I think we've been playing different games in it. I played some Jetpack this morning, which was fun.
I went for the milestones in Jetpack because that was the first one that I realized you could turn on cheats. And I was like, well, I'll just turn on the cheats and get my milestones in this because I want to unlock all those videos.
And again, kind of the interesting thing about it is that, and I'm going to probably catch so much flack for this more than anything else I've said, some of those N64 games just have not aged well.
Oh, no. They're bad. Yeah.
Like, I tried playing Conquer, and all the milestones in Conquer are like the multiplayer. And I'm going to say this right now, and hopefully it'll get some controversy or discussion or whatever. The multiplayer in Conquer is garbage. It is bad. It is not
I haven't actually tried the multiplayer in Conquer. I tried a couple minutes of the single player, and I was like, these controls are awful. What am I even doing? I can't.
I think it was cool for the time being. It was a good. I remember playing that a lot on the N64, but maybe, like you said, it didn't age well. The graphics look really muddy on every N64 game.
Having said that, I think they're working on a patch for some of that stuff, maybe. So, it'll probably get better.
Yeah, hopefully. Control at least a little bit more modern. I think Jet Force Gemini is also kind of weird. I didn't play back in the day, so maybe if I did, I'd be like, this feels perfect. This feels exactly like I remember. But playing it today, I just tried to go back, and I'm like, this is weird.
I want to know why they have Perfect Dark Zero and not Perfect Dark.
They do have Perfect Dark. They don't have GoldenEye. I think that's the big
Perfect
missing.
Dark is the Xbox re-release.
Okay.
It's like not the N64 and Banjo-Tooie.
Yeah, because then they also have the Xbox 360 games on your system, so you have the Perfect Dark re-release installed on your system, but not the original N64 thing that it boosts in from the game itself.
And if you were curious, I did in fact confirm that Rare had said on a live stream back when they were showing this game off, they're going to patch some new controls into stuff like Jet Force Gemini.
Yeah, and thank God.
I think they took that to heart. That there's kind of walking this fine line between being the sort of historical preservation and also still making it work as a contemporary game. We can talk more about that in a second. I just wanted to also mention I've been playing more Heroes of the Storm. I've had like a really bad run of luck in Heroes of the Storm. I tried out the heroes that Chatty recommended. I still haven't found the one I like. Elite Tauren Chieftain's cool. That's one a lot of people talked about. I can't quite get him to be what I want him to be. So we'll see. But I did also I picked up Nova and Joanna the Paladin from Diablo largely because I just like those characters.
Now, did you take any of the? I saw that Chatty was giving you recommendations.
They did. They were, and there's some great recommendations. So I did try some of them out. I just haven't quite found the one yet that is like my main. I'm still kind of
dating.
What's that?
It sounds like you're dating. Like you're saying like.
Listen,
well,
you
I've
gotta
tried
a
a
little
bunch,
bit and
but
see what I like, and then we'll go from there.
I haven't quite found the one.
Don't I deserve
like
to be
the
picky?
One...
I deserve to be picky.
You do. So
that's all.
Greg,
that's all I was going to say about that.
Greg, what have you been playing lately?
All right, I recently discovered a Titanfall for the first time because I came out and I was like, oh, I'll play this, and then I just never got around to it, and then I got it through GameFly a few days ago, and it's been really fun.
Titanfall's great.
And then, of course, I've been playing nothing but Titanfall and Heroes of the Storm.
Is the community still like active on Titanfall? Like, are there enough people playing that it's a good experience?
I haven't had problems. The only problems I've had is that the matchmaking seems kind of random. Like, I'll play hardpoint or objectives, and it seems like I'm playing on a team with 5 people all communicating, like, all friends, because we're just getting stomped. It'll be like 100 to 400 points, and we're like, okay, how come we can't get a single hard point? But other than that, there's still a lot of people. I don't have a problem finding games, and it's a lot of fun. It's interesting seeing the evolution of a shooter because aside from Battlefield, a lot of the first-person shooters aren't really strategic. Like, a lot of them are twitchy. So it's like reaction time beats strategy. Like, if you're faster on the draw and know the map better, you're going to probably do better than someone who is like, okay, we're going to flank them on the left, and then I'm going to give you cover, and you're just going to get killed. Someone's going to come behind you and just scream. But it's an interesting game. I mean, I played it a little bit like at press events and stuff, but I've been playing it nonstop for the last 3 days, so it's been really fun. And then Heroes, of course.
Yeah.
I'm ranked like 21 in Heroes right now, so I've been addicted to that game officially.
Who is your hero of choice?
Johanna, because she's so broken. And
that's why I got her, is because she was so broken when I was playing against her. I'm like, oh, if you can't beat him, join him.
Yeah, she's gonna get patched. She's too good. She has too much CC, and you can't get away from her, and she doesn't die. Like, her trait is too short. 20 seconds is a ridiculous cooldown time for how good that trait is. I think it's gonna be doubled next patch, or go to like 35 or something. And then I play Sylvanas if I don't want to try hard, because she's like auto play. You can just like push a lane and do everything solo, and you don't need to worry about team fights.
I think she was one of the other ones I was looking at.
You need to keep these in mind.
Yeah, you should.
You should get on such starter heroes that it's like
train.
Yeah, Sylvanas is my go-to no-try hero because she like autopilots through games.
How about you, Steve?
I think we lost Steve. Technical difficulties arise. I think Steve. Oh yeah, I'll fill in for Steve. He's playing a lot of Hearthstone.
Hearthstone.
And non-stop Hearthstone all day, every day.
Yeah.
No.
So,
I mean, always like more into what have you been playing, because it just goes without saying. Like, of course I have been. Like, what's the point of even talking? I've been playing some Hearthstone. We should have like a weekly.
I think we should just have a website that says, is Steve still playing Hearthstone.com, and it'll just say yes.
Again, because this week's is pretty interesting.
We're losing Steve, aren't we, Brian?
I mean, we could just talk about Heroes of the Storm for a while.
Yeah, Heroes of the Storm is great. I like it because it's not pay to win. And like, I've actually looked at the Hearthstone meta.
The Hearthstone is play to win. It's pay to win.
Well, the Hearthstone meta is nuts. Like, I'm just looking at these builds, and people are like, "Here's your percentage rate, and here is like your accuracy rate of what you're pulling." It's like it's like 100% statistics and it's math. And I talked to Firebat, and he's like, "Oh, it's all math. It's just all math." I'm like, "Wow, that's intense." Like, It's like watching a science triathlon with two people play with the same deck because, I mean, there is strategy. You do have to know what cards to play, when to play them. At the same time, a lot of it is just, deck composition and percentage rate and draw rate and card advantage. But that's any card game, though, not just Hearthstone.
Yeah, that's kind of like just taking that CCG mentality and putting it in a new space. Like the same conversations you have in Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway,
Steve, we're losing you. We're losing you.
I know. I'm slowly fading.
He's like, maybe I should close out all these downloads. Hold on. He's like, I'm streaming, playing.
Oh, hold on. I shouldn't be downloading 5 movies at the same time.
It depends on the movies.
Yeah.
He's updating Steam. He's downloading 5 movies.
Oh, I should download Heroes of the Storm. That's a good idea, guys.
That's a good idea.
Anyway, I have been playing mostly Rare Replay.
Okay. What are you playing on Rare Replay?
Nuts and bolts. You say nuts and bolts.
Hold on. Fuck this.
Steve's like nuts and bolts all the time, every day, all day.
Yeah.
Nuts and bolts is a good game.
I thought it was funny that on the list they're like Nuts and Bolts is the worst one. I'm like, I don't know. It looks like the most fun of the Banjo-Kazooies to me. But
did you play the other 2 Banjo-Kazooies?
No, like that's the thing is I never really.
That's why you like. Oh, it looks fun. It's fun because you haven't played the other 2.
I played Banjo-Kazooie and I played a little bit of Tooie. Nuts and Bolts. Here's how I put it in the chat. Great Banjo-Kazooie game, but it is a great game. Like if you go in expecting a Banjo-Kazooie game, you're going to be kind of disappointed.
If you go and expect it's called Banjo-Kazooie though. If you go in expecting it to be Banjo-Kazooie,
but it's
well, this is
a whole game.
We never had this issue until I came onto the cast. It's all my fault. Greg! It's all my fault. I'm sending a DOS to Steve. Hold on. Shutting down his whole system. It's our Chattycast now. Poor Steve. No, we don't even have audio. Oh, dear. Oh, God. Brian, why don't you take over because you got this. What's the next segment?
So we definitely talked about the games we're playing. In theory, we've talked about them. He's okay. Hold on a second. I don't know why.
I don't know what's wrong. What's happening?
Okay. So anyway, like the big thing we want to talk about this week is, of course, the topic of Kickstarter. Now, a lot of a lot of issues have popped up about Kickstarter over the last few weeks. Of course, the main one is this discussion of Mighty Number 9, that sort of thing. But that's our big topic for the week. We really wanted to cover what exactly it means to kickstart something, what exactly it means to be a backer, and that sort of thing. And I don't have a script in front of me, so I'm just kind of winging it, and hoping that eventually we will get Steve back here because he really knows what's going on. I'm just mostly here to look pretty.
Well, I could tell you straight off the bat what I think about kickstarting projects.
Sure.
I think it's a great tool because, 20 years ago, if you had an idea, you had to go to an investor and you had to go to a company and say, give me millions of dollars to start production or get me off the ground, and they had to invest, and it was a risk. Now it's much more risk-free for the person making the object, product, or game. But at the same time, it kind of bugs me because if you're giving money to a game, like just the Darkest Dungeon, if I give you $200 towards your game, great, I'll get these like rewards or whatever, but shouldn't I be getting a percentage of the game that sells? Like, shouldn't I get a stock in your company, like, something like that, something in return? But the problem is if you do that, and me and Osif have had this kind of conversation a lot, is that you get all these legal ramifications in the way, and then it's not as straightforward as, hey, give me money and I'll make it, and it gets really convoluted really quickly. But like something for like Oculus, people gave Oculus millions and millions of dollars, and then they sold to Facebook, and just profited out, and everyone just was like, "Oh, thanks for my DK1 beta headset," like it's, and that's where I think it gets out of control a little bit. You really have to respect people giving you money. And regarding Mighty Number 9, that was in development forever, and I've actually played it, and it is done. Well, not like it's done, like it's really close to being done. But some of these games, like Red Ash,
it's playable.
Which failed $800,000, and I'm just starting to think, like, do Japanese game developers not know how to budget a game? Like, they're just like, oh, well, we need our salaries, obviously, $200,000 a piece, and then we need to hire all our. It's like, well, you're supposed to have a budget constraint idea.
Let's be real. That like budgets. I mean, like not knowing how to budget is a problem that happens with game developers across the board. Like, I mean, just there's been plenty of like look at BioShock Infinite, for example, but. Yeah, it seems like it's especially a problem in this thing. Like, we don't have a CEO. We don't have somebody kind of setting the budget for us. We're just kind of like, well, we're going to put this out there and essentially have theoretically limitless money coming in and just base it on that. But more importantly, hi, Steve.
Hi, I'm back.
Hey, sorry, I can see it. I can hear. I'm amazed.
You have like this really pretty intro, and I'm like, I completely botched it.
No, it's fine. It's fine. The intro actually. The intro is sort of bringing up a variety of different examples of crowdfunding crowdfunding oddities that have occurred recently. So I'll just run through them really quick. Bloodstained and Yooka-Laylee are basically very nostalgic types of games, but they set their goals well below the actual development cost, and then just use the public. Shenmue, extremely weird. And Red Ash, which just closed this week, it essentially bailed on its Kickstarter. It kind of paid lip service to it and said, like, oh, we're going to use it for stretch goals, but it didn't even mention what the stretch goals were. It felt like it kind of knew it wasn't going to get the funding anyway. So it was basically bailing on it. So my questions to the community were, what does the future hold for this development model? Do big projects that undershoot their real dev cost undermine the true indie scene? Is it okay for publisher like Stone Stage? And should Kickstarter and other crowdfunding sites revise policies to prevent last-minute goalpost changing? My implication, obviously, the impetus of all of this, and that's a lot of questions, which is why it is our big topic. We could sort of tackle them one by one.
Okay. So here's the interesting thing. When it comes to the future. I think that we're in this weird position, and I don't want to like delve. I want to definitely give the community some time to chime in here, but we're in this weird position where you're starting to see some of these big name Kickstarters poison the well, and it is hard for me, especially like I will say this from personal experience. In the interest of full disclosure, I did in fact back Mighty Number 9 because, and this is in medical terms. I have this complete psychosis when it comes to Mega Man. Okay, I have to like if somebody says here's a Mega Man thing, there's a good chance I'm going to give them money for that thing. Okay, even if it's not actually Mega Man. So I backed it and I was really excited about it. Like here's this chance to have Inafune is like one of the real good guys in game development. He's like not the creator of Mega Man, but like the Godfather of Mega Man. Put it out there, and things were going well. They really championed this transparency, but sometime this year, maybe like late last year, that kind of started going away, and they started running like the secondary Kickstarters or trying to raise more money for certain parts of the game that were not covered underneath the original stretch goals, and it's like that's weird, but whatever, stuff comes up. Those didn't really work, but then without really telling the backers, they went and made a publishing deal with Deep Silver, which is okay. I suppose, except that all of a sudden people who backed the game from the start were now going to be left out of getting certain things, getting certain items, bonuses, etc. that people who waited and bought the game at retail will now get instead. So that was kind of the first problem, and then we had the issue just now where they started running other Kickstarters for other games, including one that was basically Mega Man Legends 3, which is another thing I'd be happy to give somebody money for. But without ever actually finishing the original game. So we're starting to get into some really weird territory, right? And then, of course, this is all, you guys probably all know this very, very well, is that this game started, there's rumors of it getting pushed back. You had GameStop and other retailers already reporting a 2016 release date for it. They hadn't said anything to backers, and they were denying it up and down. The Red Ash Kickstarter fails. Like a day or two later, they say Mighty Number 9 gets delayed. The backers found out weeks after retailers did. And now you can kind of see why people are very hesitant to support anything else. Not only that Inafune does, but also that anything that Kickstarter does, or that gets funded on Kickstarter now.
Well, like obviously,
I rambled there for a while. Sorry.
This comes back to that pre-order mentality that I hate. Is essentially with Kickstarter, you're giving money, you're donating money. There's nothing. I mean, I think there were 3 or 4 really super rare cases where big backers, got money back, but you're giving them the money. They don't have to legally finish the game. They don't have to do anything with it. They can raise $1 million and then say, okay, we're not making the game, thanks. Or like make a shitty game, and be like, all right, then pocket the money, which is what people, it's a broken system. So people don't understand that you're donating money. So they don't have to be good on their backers. They don't have to be good on finishing the game. And when you're making a game, there's no milestones because you have this essentially well of funding. Like when you have an investor, you got to be okay. We have to get this money, this game done by this date because you're out of money. When there is no due date, when you have a well of funds, so they can just spend as much time as they want making. Look at Path of Exile. Like they're not done. Like they're still like adding on to the game because they have this bottomless well of money. But
and it's all jumping off of that, Greg. It's all prediction based because it's we think let's just assume that there's a vanilla Kickstarter, which is not how these things tend to work anymore. But let's just assume this is how much money we think it will cost to make the game. Give us that much money, If they set that goal, there's no room for over budgeting because as soon as they go over budget, they're like stretch goals, and then the stretch goals might go over budget. You don't know. So like the realistic thing to tell backers would be like, we might go over budget. We won't know until we're like in the thick of it. So if we raise more, then that might have to be our over budget parachute. We don't know. Like that's how game development actually works. But it's not a consumer facing thing that you can actually say and be taken seriously because people will hate you for it. So no one works that way.
And some of the chatty commenters kind of got into that. Freon was talking about how like this is kind of like investing in a startup, right? Like you have no guarantee, and even with an established name like Inafune, that's a guy who's been around the block, right? We know this guy, we know what he can do. Double Fine, Tim Schafer, all of these different companies and people, they're well-established names and brands. But you're still investing in just this sort of like pie-in-the-sky idea they have. And you're literally investing in ideas that, and I think you hit this in your editorial you did, and I think it was actually a very salient point, even though because it's about essentially Mega Man Legends 3, it hurts me very deeply. But the idea that you are essentially investing in an idea that the regular marketplaces already refuse to do because they just do not see the value in it or the profit in it. That's kind of insane. Like, so it's and building on that notion of investing in a startup, like then getting something back in return. That is, you really have to. Even the sure bets aren't sure bets anymore.
Well, the thing is it's funny because whenever you use the term invest, it throws me off because, like I said, in Kickstarter, you're donating money. So when you invest, you're supposed to get something back. But when, like in Shenmue, like if I invest $15,000, I get to have dinner with Shenmue's creator. How is that a profit return off my $15,000?
You just paid for a very expensive dinner.
Basically.
But like people frame it that way all the time. Like Freon mentioned, it's like investing in a startup. Arcanum responded to him and said the return and risk aren't especially good, but the amount of money in question is pretty trivial for the investor. You talk about investing for equity, but how much equity would you actually be getting for $35?
Right.
Not much, I think, is the implied answer there. He says a tiny fraction of a percent.
Sure.
So yeah, it's really a donation. It's we have faith in this, which is I think why when you bring up experienced developers, the ones that we see take off are the ones that it's like this is a guy that we know already made basically this game, and he wants to make almost exactly that game again. So here's the money to do it. Because if it's just some guy saying I want to make a game, it could be a really cool idea, but you're like, well, how do we know that you even can do that? You know, like what reason do we have any faith in you at all?
And that's why like a lot of I say people should only support indie games and not like bigger games, because like we don't know the business ethics behind them. What if like Shenmue went to Sony and was like, we need $5 million, and Sony's like, no, we're not going to give you $5 million, but if you raise this much money, we'll pay for your porting. You know what I mean? Like, because some of these people have unrealistic budget goals, like I said before, with their game. Because like you can make a great game for a fraction of a price what it cost 10 years ago, but I don't think a lot of developers understand that, which goes back to budgeting to games. Like Darkest Dungeon was great. I mean, they've added a lot of improvements now, but they met their goal, and it was a small team, and they were able to do it. And then you have like $800,000 for Mega Man Legends. I'm like, how many people do you need now? Like, realistically now, how big is your team? Like, what are you paying yourself in salary for the game?
Mm-hmm. It's really weird too, because these are in a lot of cases niche projects. They're aimed at small investors, and so like there is the argument again that like Kickstarter is great because stuff that could not sustain itself at the level of a Call of Duty or an Assassin's Creed can now find an audience and cater directly to that audience, and that audience can like literally vote with their dollars. But I think we get to this point where essentially you are playing on people's nostalgia to get them to hand you a free loan.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, a free loan, yeah.
And maybe it's not so much investment or pre-ordering as it is, here's some money, no strings attached, I have no way of getting this back. You wouldn't do that for anybody else. I wouldn't do that for my family, right? Like, that's weird when you sit and think about it. Kickstarter is a really strange business. And then we start muddying the waters. Like we could talk about Shenmue for a second in particular, because that's one of the questions that Steve brought up, is the question, can we have a big company like Sony using its massive megaphone at an E3 conference and saying, hey, look, here's the Shenmue Kickstarter. You guys like Shenmue, right? Go give us more money to make this.
That's free money.
And it gets this really weird gray area like now, and we're all venture capitalists in this sector, but we don't. But again, like we've talked about, you don't get anything back.
And I was the only one I think that noticed when they announced the Kickstarter. Was like Sony was basically like, we didn't believe in this enough, but maybe you do. Like that's basically what they were saying. Like, we're not going to give them money, but you can't. It's just I was like, that sounds terrible. But everyone was too busy gagaing over Shenmue to like care. So
that was kind of the theme of that Sony press conference, if we're being honest. It's a lot of, oh my god, I can't believe this thing actually exists, without any discussions of the actual reality of that thing existing. But I still don't think Final Fantasy VII Remake comes out anytime before like 2017. But anyway, that's besides the point. Yeah, 20.
Well, people are saying, like, because Shenmue is like one of the first. Like, I remember when it came out on the Xbox, it was like one of the first open world games. It was like a big deal to have open world games back then, but now it's like not so much a huge deal to have an open world game. I'm not saying like, I mean, that was one of the selling points of the Kickstarter. It was like huge open world. It's like, well, Assassin's Creed has that, GTA has that, Skyrim has that, Fallout, like every game is like open world now. So sell me another one, basically is what I'm saying.
and those things aren't cheap. So we're kind of in this. It's a weird system. But I think the biggest thing is, Hexium talks about this notion of regulations, that if you like, there should be some sort of like regulation or policy put in place that gives backers more protection if a company underdelivers. And I think there's something to that, but I also don't see it happening. So I think the biggest thing is I want to see more transparency. Like that's, anytime you're talking about people giving these like, again, interest-free, no strings attached loans, it'd be nice to at least have more transparency about what is actually being done with the money. And you have that through backer updates, but it's really left up to the ethics and to the sort of like practices of the given company to actually do that stuff correctly. So like, Concept can go and make the deal with Deep Silver and not tell backers until like literally they find out in the news. But another company might actually be very straightforward and say, hey, we went and sought outside funding because we need it for this, this, and this. It's not, it will affect you in this way, but we want to tell you first before anybody else found out. right? So you see kind of like examples of both, and I would like to see a lot more trending towards transparency in that regard. Are you back with us, Steve?
I am. I'm
You wanna
back.
chime in?
I'm gonna cut all this together somehow. Point. You talked about transparency, and I think that's like the big thing involving a couple of the issues I brought up. The whole we're asking for less than we actually need.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to take your interest and say like, look, we have 6,000 people that are willing to give us money for it already. That translates to this many in sales. So give us a couple $1 million to actually do the game for real. Like there's that aspect to it, which companies, I think that's basically the norm now, but companies aren't really saying it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's definitely a problem. It also becomes a problem with like we still have no idea what happened with Shenmue and Sony, really. like how involved is Sony in Shenmue 3? They promoted it on stage. We assume that there is some level of publishing support.
They're porting the game at no. This is what their PR team says. They're porting the game at no cost to the studio to work for PS4.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's weird. Like that's like these are
Right. It's
details.
no cost to the studio. It's the cost to the backers who gave the money to the studio.
Right.
These are details that we shouldn't have to dig for, and the sort of I implied this in my questions. The sort of unintended consequence of these big studios, or not even big studios, but big projects like Yooka-Laylee is going to be a pretty big project. It's a Banjo-Kazooie like platformer that takes a few $1 million. They asked for something less than that. The unintended consequence is, as I've heard some indie developers talking about, is like there are indie devs out there that are like, look, for me, getting $500,000 to make my little indie game would be like life-changing, but I can't ask for that because people are like, well, how come you don't look like Yooka-Laylee?
Right, and that's a huge problem too. Like when you have these big companies, because Penny Arcade actually did something like this too, where they did a thing on Kickstarter to, I think it was something for their podcast or something like that, and they set it at like $1.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to make that dollar.
Everything after that was like stretch goals.
But that just guarantees they get the money, and so like setting your budget really really low. And I don't think that a lot of these studios